Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thank God it's Friday. It's been one hell of a week for me, dealing with so much. And I am going through a grieving process right now because I just found out my friend Caroline Bailey has passed away. And I found this out yesterday from one of my close friends, Miranda and Jennifer. But yeah, I was in shock and all because I didn't think, I mean, I saw that she looked like she was sick. I saw her coughing and whatnot, but I didn't realize to what extent. And honestly, there were certain days that, we would talk and other days that we didn't. So, because, it just looked like she was just to herself. But anyways, I wanted to tell you guys that life is so chaotic sometimes. Even for myself, I had to really look and evaluate all the things that I went through this week. I mean, hell, I had classes on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and I just really needing a break. But anyways, I want to go to the topic of the subject of what I had written on YouTube, and that is how Stefan Speaks has been speaking about relationships and situationships and relationships in general. Like, I knew that because I was just talking to somebody, Jerry, for 9 months, and then I realized that he did not give me clarity in my relationships. And I asked him this past week, like, when are you going to come over to see me? His response was, I have no idea. And that is a big red flag. I mean, I'm going to put it down. People talk about red flags, and I want to just say that red flags and green flags are just as important as the next. And Stefan is really real about what he talks about. He's very realistic, very genuine hearted. And that's why I listen on to his relationship, his YouTube channel. One of the biggest things that I've noticed in dating and the way that relationships have become is that we have been taught in a society to putting pressure onto a relationship, marriage, whatever it is. We have the titles in relationships, which is very important. And the only way you're able to see this, because I've noticed when I was talking to Jerry, is that, because we were in a long distance relationship, he just kept on, tugging along, and not barely even telling me, barely even having the minimal. So, one of the biggest things that I want to mention in this video is that it is important to get clarity in a relationship. I knew that once I asked him questions about, how long is this going to be? Do you see a future? And his response is, I don't know. That's not good enough. When you really see, and I had to delete all his text messages because I was like, there's no way in the world I'm going to let this bother me and allow me to be consumed with, no matter how long it was, I'm not going to let this consume in my mind. And I'm not going to let it, despite my stresses, because I already have a lot I already have to deal with. So, a lot of people that know me know that I don't tolerate and deal with rudeness. I can't comprehend how people can be so adamantly rude to other people. That's not something that I would tolerate. I wouldn't tolerate that from my manager. I wouldn't tolerate that from anybody. And so when we talk about different relationships, just like I've been following Stefan Speaks for many years now, and he talks about being exclusive in dating and relationships. Now, when you're in a relationship with somebody, and you know that there are things in your relationship that aren't really settled and it doesn't feel right to you, that is God sending you an indication that that relationship is not going to necessarily work out. Now, I had this replaying in my mind quite a bit, and like I said, when Stefan talks about what he went through, and I'm pretty sure he's had doubts in relationships. We all do, okay? Because in relationships, there is that amount of uncertainty of where is this relationship headed. You know, a lot of women get anxious because they don't know where this relationship is going. And and being a Christian believer, regardless of whatever it is, you still have your doubts, you still have your fears. And I've even gotten a book called Emotional Attachments, which is what I want to share with you guys about. Okay, so this book I got at the library. I would definitely highly recommend you guys to read this book. It's called Attachment Theory in Practice. Now, this is basically influence therapy with individuals, couples, and families. So, one of the things that is very important to understand is that the family dynamic. Does your significant other have a good relationship with their family? Is it a supportive family? Because that all will tell you what kind of things, and some people might not have the best relationship with their family, but they do need some kind of support. We all do. And so that was one of the biggest questions in my head about relationships and things like that, especially when I had dealt with Jerry, because he told me he didn't have family support. And I'm like, well, this is not going to really work out that well because, of course, he did not have family support. And that meant like we would be struggling, okay? And not only that, financially struggling, which is, of course, a lot of times people end up being divorced because of the fact that the money isn't there, or something is off. And I can say when listening on to 101.9, they talked a lot about getting a legal thing, binding up to legal documents to where like a prenup basically, and talking about what is going on in your relationship just as much as like I said, therapy I believe is really important in a relationship, because if you have therapy and you guys have a problem, you can go to somebody. I'm not just saying any random therapist. I'm talking about a therapist that really, cares. I've had therapists that truly have cared, and I just spoke to a therapist on NYC counseling, and they talked a lot about just the whole idea of therapy, just the whole ideas of how to deal with dealing with the difficulties of relationships. Because if you come from a background of family who really did not care, then of course you're going to need therapy. Another thing is we have left ourselves to being unsettled and unresolved, and certain things that come up that of course is out of our hands. But like I said, when I read books, that I love reading psychology books, and that was one of my biggest things that I wanted to talk about, is that when you're when you are idle and you have, like for me, for example, I had so much going on during the week that it's hard for me to really see all the good things about life. And I just had to really think about, like, what is this going to look like for me personally. And having self-care that I was talking to a therapist about, that was really important in thinking about relationships, because if you are not pouring into yourself, how can you be pouring into a lot of people? And so I think that was one of my biggest problems, is that I always try to pour into others and I don't really pour into myself, which is why it can be very challenging. It can be very difficult in those stages of life, because I only have so much time in the day to dealing with and coping with these things that are, you know, easy to deal with. And so, but yeah, I just wanted to bring those topics up a little bit. I knew that when I was thinking about a serious relationship, I started thinking about, you know, is he going to be genuine? Is he really going to be there? And those are all the questions that we have in relationships. So ideally, when you're in a relationship, how can you make it easier for yourself? Like, and if it's stressful, then that relationship, I mean, if your guys have stress in your life, that's one thing, but it's another to have misery. And misery loves company. Like I always said, misery really does love company. So make sure that you're dating somebody who is going to have healthy boundaries and somebody who's going to really pay attention to your everyday life needs. But yeah, I really, after listening to, you know, and studying all this stuff, I really I really idolized the fact that I really did do a lot of inner work, and I continually keep doing a lot of inner work dealing with the things that have been going on in my life, and all the things that I've had to have challenges to dealing with. But those are things that we as human beings that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So that's something that I know personally that I've had to overcome and deal with. Anyways, you guys, I hope you guys have an awesome week. I know I will, because this week was so long, and I'm just glad that the summertime is about to come around, and I knew I didn't want to work again in school, but I really had to figure out a way financially about how to build up my finances. And I'm just thankful to God that I get the opportunity to do the things that I do. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, or feel free to watch my videos, share, subscribe to my channel, and I definitely will reach out to you guys, and have a good weekend. Oh yeah, and then also happy Memorial Day. It's a holiday, so that's even better than just dealing with a whole week, and then you're not really having a weekend, and I mean you're not really having your whole week. I feel like the weeks go by so quickly. So anyways, have a good one.